just before sunrise. Sector Bravo 4 burns. Mortars have walked the lane, leaving dust in the mouth, burning oil on the wind, and vehicles shattered along the berms. Radios chatter in clipped bursts from different accents that step on each other. Petty Officer First Class Avery Collins moves through it one breath at a time. The Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technician, embedded with Naval Special Warfare, drags a wounded private from a burning striker while grit stings her eyes and steel pops in the heat. She kneels behind a twisted door, packs hemostatic gauze into a junctional bleed, and cinches a pressure dressing until the pulse quiets. She checks airway and breathing, hears her ragged yes, then shoulders the private and staggers toward a triage point near 2 Humvees. Overworked medics run march triage with fast, sure hands. They lift the private to a stretcher and wave Avery from the evacuation lane as a UH-60 Black Hawk climbs. Rotor wash blasting grit across her teeth and snapping the canvas. A second bird lifts. A scorched MRAP blocks the crosswind, and she is nudged behind it by a harried corpsman while the valley settles into a thin, dangerous quiet carrying only distant artillery and the faint crack of rock on a torn slope. Her 2 dog tags tap her chest as she breathes. Mud shifts and reveals a faint personal trident tattoo above the collarbone. Not official. Just ink from years of work. She sets her jaw, steadies her hands, and looks for the next task that keeps people alive. Sector Bravo 4 holds its breath in gray light before sunrise. Mortar impacts have carved a kill zone of dust, burning oil, and splintered metal. HMM, WV, Humvees, and MRAPs form a loose perimeter around smoking striker hulls and torn canvas. Engines idle with a dry rattle while crews scan sectors and mark hazards from cover. An improvised treatment area runs on tactical combat casualty care. Strict march from muscle memory. Medics move fast between tarps, calling massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, and hypothermia checks. A triage officer points with a marker and sorts by survivability while litter teams sprint. Avery Collins gets tagged as walking wounded. Her pressure dressing, holding while worse bleeds, take priority. On the net, a logistics element calls aircraft status in clipped bursts over static and dust. Last UA-60 Black Hawk, lifting. Fuel, tight. Perimeter hold until follow-on. Then push convoy. Rotor wash whips grit across faces, drowns the rest of the call, and beats at tarps. When the bird fades, Avery stands alone behind a scorched MRAP without an evacuation slot. Radios keep working the plan, not the person. And the mistake sits inside overload. No bias. Just fog of war. Too few hands. And minutes burned by noise and fire. The valley drops into a brief calm that feels loud, broken only by distant artillery. Convoy engines grumble slowly to move. And Avery counts breaths while measuring the cost of being stranded. A dusty EOD patch sits on Avery Collins's plate carrier, half hidden by grit. Her common access card bends in a clear sleeve, edges scuffed from months in the field. Oil clings to gloves. Avery is Petty Officer First Class, an E6 Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technician with Naval Special Warfare support. She is not a Navy SEAL and does not claim to be. Navy EOD works beside special operations to find, make safe, and remove explosive hazards. They advise commanders on safe lanes, mark danger areas, and keep convoys moving when the ground is untrustworthy. Mud slides from her collar and a faint trident tattoo shows for a second. A personal mark, not an official badge. 4 days ago, she ran EOD reconnaissance along this corridor and logged what the map missed. She noted half-buried skull and crossbone signs and a white-veined rock that anchors a switchback. A tilted line of stakes pointed toward an old mine belt beyond the creek. Today her tasking is simple to read and hard to do under fire. Validate the transit lane. Mark hazards for the convoy. And be the memory of the ground when the radios go loud. If the column drifts, her recall can walk heavy vehicles from rock to stump to cairn and buy time to live. Behind a burned MRAP, Avery Collins works the checklist in her head. She stays low, breath steady, eyes scanning the lane for movement. First light is unforgiving today. She finds the source fast. It is a junctional bleed at the groin and lower abdomen where a tourniquet will not seal. She tears open combat gauze and packs the wound firmly until the sponge grips and the seep slows. Both hands hold pressure. Elbows braced on armor. She wraps a pressure dressing to lock the packing in place and keeps weight on it for a long count. If pressure slips, she resets and tightens again. A SAM junctional tourniquet rides in the ruck she pulled from cover. She fits the pad where it needs to sit, inflates and cinches. Or if parts are missing, she builds a pelvic binder to stabilize the ring and maintain pressure. Airway and breathing come next. She speaks a clear sentence, tastes grit, and knows the airway is open while she listens for equal rise and any wet note. No signs of a chest wound. So she moves to circulation. She knows shock trashes veins, so she sets intraosseous access at the proximal humerus. Flushes, places a saline lock, and guards volume until blood products arrive with the quick reaction force. Hypothermia kills fast. She slides a space blanket from the med pack, spreads foil under and over, and traps heat while crinkle covers rotor noise in her ears. Pain control is measured and by the book. She uses a ketamine auto-injector per protocol or a small controlled dose of morphine. Then checks pupils, breathing, and level of alertness. She does not pull shrapnel. She does not cauterize anything. Weapon stays on safe. Muzzle down. Sling tight. Radio sits under her chin strap with antenna canted for a clean signal. Every few minutes, she reassesses march. She confirms the packing holds. The junctional device is seated. The I/O is patent. And warmth is preserved. Sticky gloves tug at tape as she polices edges and smooths the wrap. Focus returns in small steps, like a lens turning clear in dusty light. She notes landmarks, hears engines idle, and keeps cover between her and the valley. The work is quiet, exact, and made to buy minutes for the next move. Avery Collins stays tucked beside a burned MRAP and lets the smoke work. Pistol rides low against her thigh to hide glare as she listens for boots. A broken mirror in her palm shows 2 men moving below and 1 drifting left. Their kits are clean and quiet with no flags or name tapes. She slides forward on elbows and closes the gap on the nearest target. One hand seals his mouth while the knife slides to the side of the neck and he goes heavy. She recovers an AR pattern carbine and folds behind cover to work the gun. Selector on safe. Magazine out. Chamber checked. Fresh magazine seated. Selector 2 semi. Sight picture confirmed. The second contractor crosses at roughly 30 meters in a shallow trot. She presses a controlled pair and he folds into dust and scrub. The third jolts. Keys, a radio, and breaks contact toward the trees. Avery holds fire to keep noise down and shifts to a better angle. She searches fast without lingering. Extra magazines. A handheld encrypted radio. A small consumer recon quadcopter. And field rations go to her rig. A single patch reads Ares Logistics in cheap thread. Armor plates are clean and blank. No unit. No country. Nothing to trace. She backs into shade and checks the carbine again with a short breath. Trigger finger stays indexed while she moves. The radio in her hand hisses with clipped traffic that is not local chatter. Cadence sounds paid, not militia. The pattern clicks into place as she scans the lane. This is not random chaos anymore, but a cleanup team hunting survivors. And she has seconds to act like it. Avery launches a quadcopter from the ridge and lets the rotors settle. The consumer drone hums and climbs. A thermal view blooms on the screen. Grainy but useful over cold shapes of wrecks. She pans west and watches 6 contractors sweep wrecks in a straight line. Spacing stays even. Muzzles low. Radios short. They step bodies. Check pulses. Then make sure no survivors remain there today. She shifts the drone east and finds the convoy easing around collapsed ground. 6 Humvees and 2 troop carriers hold an arc. The path bends toward a mine belt the updated map misses. Memory anchors the picture. 4 days earlier, she ran EOD recon and marked what maps ignored. A lightning-scarred stump. A white-veined rock. And half-buried skull and crossbones along the belt. She watches the convoy drift and weighs options. Let them roll into risk and disappear. Or spend herself to pull them back by landmarks. The math is harsh and clock moves now. The decision settles with memory of the private she dragged from Stryker. His helmet sat loose and his grip stayed on shoulder. Leave no one behind is not a slogan to her. She decides to intervene before the lane tightens. She picks a deer path along shale to a crag that sees the belt and road. She manages pain and trades speed for silence. The quadcopter circles on low power while she checks signal. She keeps the belt and the convoy inside her sightline. The plan is simple now. Speak only when needed and move later. Avery keys the captured handheld radio and listens for rhythm before she speaks. She mirrors the contractor cadence with short, clipped phrases that sound like routine traffic. No friendly authentication is used. Only tone, timing, and clean brevity. Her first call pushes Mortar 3 south to cover a false fire watch. The next bumps a security pair to check a ridge that does not matter. She waits for overlap on their net, then lets 2 teams step on each other. A small consumer quadcopter hangs low over the valley and feeds her a basic thermal view. She checks battery and signal, trims the hover, and keeps the lens off the sun. Overwatch stays simple so her hands can work the ground. She wedges a tire on a slope above spilled fuel and cracks a flare. Heat bites through the glove as she shoves the rolling rim, and it screeches downhill into stacked cans. The secondary blast lifts dirt, startles spotters, and blows their timing. She does not chase and aims to cut indirect fire and buy time for the convoy to clear the belt. As radios collide and orders repeat, the contractor line bends off axis, while Avery slips to a new perch that still sees the lane. She stays in cover, manages pain, and resets her plan while she marks bearings. Notes wind, and listens for the next mistake there. Avery switches to the convoy command net on Singars and calls for an immediate halt. She requests challenge and reply. Not clearance codes, because the net is open. Static settles as a 6-digit time hack, and the pre-briefed brevity tied to landmarks come back clean. The logistics lead identifies as Captain Daniel Brooks with a steady but cautious tone. Avery authenticates with the correct reply and states she is Petty Officer First Class Avery Collins, Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technician. The net quiets to working levels and engines roll down to idle. She moves to landmark guidance instead of inches. Lead Humvee brake and hold at the lightning-scarred stump. Right side spotter stays dismounted only on command. Eyes on mirrors and ground. Radio set to whisper. Avery directs a slow creep to the white-veined rock that sits left of centerline. She calls a slight pivot to bring the rear axle off soft soil and resets spacing so no vehicle double loads uncertain ground. Gunners keep sector scan high and do not fire. 50 caliber into soft earth. She references the dry creek bed cairn she stacked during EOD recon 4 days earlier. Lead Humvee creeps to the cairn while the second vehicle holds a full-length back. The column breathes and the lane begins to open. On the net, a young combat medic speaks up and notes a helmet camera clip that shows Avery pulling a private from a burning striker. The medic recognizes her role, and the room shifts from doubt to quiet respect without drama. Captain Brooks acknowledges and asks for Marks to continue. Avery keeps commands short and firm. Break. Hold. Creep. Pivot. Stop. Repeat on my mark. She reminds the column that only the right side spotter is outside the wire and that all other doors remain shut. The convoy commits to her marks and moves one landmark at a time. Engines idle low, and radios keep a whisper tone. Avery settles into a vantage that sees the lane and the ridge, manages pain, and breathes through each instruction until the belt is behind them. Avery anchors on a rocky ridge that watches the lane. Cord from a captured vest runs to a smoke canister tucked behind scrub. One step on the tripwire will pop smoke and fake a retreat into a blind spot. She nests a single recovered flashbang behind a boulder where the first push will stack. Pin pulled. Spoon trapped by rock. Angle set. She keys the convoy net with a steady update that contact is likely and to stay on her marks. 2 contractors charge through the lower pines and hit the smoke wall. She shoulders an AR pattern carbine, selector on semi, and drops the first with a controlled pair. Trigger resets, clean as she slides to new cover and angles for the second. The second attacker tries to cut right through broken shale. She takes a short breath to settle sights and sends one round center chest. The flashbang pops behind him and buys a beat as he falls quiet in the dust. A third crawls high along the spine and bumps a noise trap made from loose stones. She pivots on a knee, sights through branches, and sends a single round that ends the reach. She checks feed lips by feel and notes 1 magazine remaining. Between bursts, she keeps the net calm. Contact contained. Continue on my marks. Break and creep by the white-veined rock. Engines idle low in her ear while she scans for movement and keeps the lane in view. Every motion stays tied to cover. Sight picture. And short trigger presses. Pain rides the ribs, but breath control holds it in a box. She keeps angles narrow, ammo tight, and the enemy off her flank, while the convoy moves one safe landmark at a time. The contractor team leader steps onto the ridge with calm eyes and clean kit. Tactical pants, knee pads, gloves, and armor carry no insignia. Avery Collins sights an AR pattern carbine set to semi and presses once to center mass. The round hits plate and staggers him 2 steps into loose gravel. He closes fast and drives a forearm toward her throat. She frames with her own forearm, keeps the elbow tight, and redirects pressure off the airway. Hips rotate, and she breaks his balance with a small step and a pull. They roll through grit and stone while she keeps her head tucked and the carbine trapped. He reaches for control at the collar and tries to pin her shoulders. She slides a knee through, builds a base, and shucks the grip with short frames and a quarter turn. A palm finds a rock the size of a fist near her boot. One hard strike to the temple ends motion and leaves only breath and dust. She clears the immediate space with a slow weapon and perimeter check. Selector stays on safe. Magazine seated. Chamber verified. And muzzle kept down the slope. Breathing settles and counts while she searches the body for intelligence. A hidden pouch yields a rugged encrypted drive and a handheld radio locked to a contractor net. The picture sharpens with simple facts. The convoy route was sold, and this team was paid to make sure no one survived the lane. Avery pockets the drive and secures the radio in her rig. Eyes sweep the ridge. Ears catch engines at idle. And the focus moves back to steel. She is walking out of the mine belt. Avery stays on the convoy command net on Singars and keeps radios at whisper. She sets the rule that only the right side spotter dismounts and that everyone else remains mounted. Engines idle low to keep vibration off soft soil. She starts with the lead Humvee and uses the landmarks from her EOD recon. Brake and hold at the white-veined rock. Creep one vehicle length and pivot slightly right to set the rear axle on firm ground. Second, vehicle maintains one full-length spacing to avoid double-loading weak patches. Spotter uses mirrors and a light touch, with a 550 chord marker dragging across the surface. Barrels stay high and never sweep near the ground. The column moves to the lightning-scarred stump as a fixed anchor. Avery calls a slow creep and a short stop to let dust settle before the next mark. She breathes through pain and keeps her sightline on the lane and the ridge. One troop carrier begins to drift off the line as the ground tilts. Avery orders a hard stop and then corrects with a slight steering input and an idle crawl that pulls weight back to solid soil. She reminds Captain Daniel Brooks that spacing is life here. They reach the dry creek bed cairn she stacked 4 days earlier and reset the pace. Brake and hold while the spotter checks the right track for buried debris. Gunners maintain sector scan high and keep eyes off the soft shoulder. Vehicle by vehicle. She repeats the sequence without new language. Brake, hold, creep, pivot, stop, confirm. Short status calls flow to Captain Daniel Brooks, and the net stays calm. The last Humvee clears the belt, and the radios exhale together. Engines settle into a steady idle, and the spacing relaxes. Avery shifts attention back to security and confirms the column is ready to move to a safer rally point. The lane is stable and the column holds in place. The convoy asks for her location to send a fire team. Avery Collins keeps her voice level and orders them to protect their wounded while she holds the ridge. A young combat medic comes on the net with worry riding his breath. He says she will die up there. Avery answers that she will die on her feet. Smoke drifts across the rocks and brush cracks on her flank. She settles the AR pattern carbine on semi and lets the front sight rest. One attacker breaks through the haze and commits. She controls her breath and smooths the trigger press. A single clean shot ends the rush and brings the slope back to quiet. She confirms one magazine left and reseats the rifle in the pocket of her shoulder. Avery returns to the convoy net without haste. She tells them to stay on her marks and to keep spacing and engines at idle. Her tone is steady and leaves no room for argument. The radios fall into a respectful calm. Vehicles creep by landmarks and the lane stays open. Avery shifts a few feet to new cover and resets her angle to watch the approach. Rotors build from the south as the convoy holds a perimeter off the mine belt. One UH-60 Black Hawk leads and an HH-60 Mike Medevac follows. Avery Collins keeps eyes on the ridge and gives Captain Daniel Brooks a short sitrep. Gunners maintain sectors and keep barrels high over soft ground while drivers hold idle. Landing zone control uses vehicles and visual panels to mark a safe touch point. No pyrotechnics near the belt. Only hand signals and clear space. The UH-60 Black Hawk flares and the HH-60 Mike holds a circle. Dust lifts and crew chief's guide skids to dirt. The QRF commander steps in with a clean handoff and confirms control. Avery passes an encrypted rugged drive into an evidence bag and notes the contractor net radio is secured. Medics run march without drama. Massive hemorrhage checked. Airways managed. Respirations assessed. Circulation supported. And hypothermia prevention started while blood products prepare on the HH-60 Mike. Litters move fast under crew chief control and lock in. Avery refuses to board first and points the worst cases to the Medevac while she holds security. Engines spool. Straps click. And the cabin settles into a steady hum. Avery sends a final status that the lane is clear and keeps watch until the last litter lifts now. Avery comes off the ridge with careful steps. Legs shake. Pressure dressing holds. and dog tags tap against her chest. Dust hangs in warm light across the perimeter. Soldiers lower weapons as she passes the line of Humvees and MRAPs. Captain Daniel Brooks walks up with helmet in hand and steady eyes. He accepts responsibility without excuses, and she answers with a short nod that keeps focus on the mission. A medic brings a litter and waits for her signal. She declines and points him toward a casualty who cannot stand. She crosses to the young private she pulled from the striker. Fingers check the wrap and sling. Confirm distal pulse. And tighten a loose corner of tape. Relief shows on his face like air returning to the lungs. She tells him he is stable and that the convoy will move to a safer rally point. The landing zone holds under clean control. Rotors cycle in the distance, while crew chiefs track hand signals and keep the lane clear. Weapons stay on safe and barrels point high. Radios settle into short updates, and the perimeter feels orderly again. Avery reaches the tailgate of a Humvee and takes a seat. She breathes through the ache. Watches sectors, and keeps her eyes moving past the road and into the trees. The HH-60 Mike Medevac sits configured with litters and blood products. A UH-60 Black Hawk holds nearby on a short hover. Dust lifts and settles in warm light. Avery Collins moves with rotor awareness and stays inside crew chief control. She approaches from the front arc where the tail boom is visible. Hand signals guide every step. She helps lift a corporal with a partial foot amputation onto a litter. Straps are checked at shoulders and hips. Head securement confirmed. And lines routed clean. She signals the flight medic with an open palm. Open spots go to the worst cases first, under march priority. She waves off early boarding for herself and points 2 more litters forward. The crew chief locks frames and calls ready. Only after the last stretcher is secure does she grip the handrail with a blood-stained glove. She steps in low, watches the rotor disc, and clears her gear from the door track. The cabin smell is fuel and gauze. The crew chief gives a thumbs in. Engines rise and headsets click. Avery sits down. Dog tags tap once. Eyes forward. No dramatic look back. Duty feels quiet in this moment. Let others go first. Then ride last. The aircraft lifts and the work continues. Rotors settle into cruise and the HH-60 Mike Medevac levels out. Avery Collins focuses on slow breaths and keeps warmth sealed under a space blanket. On the ground, the Quick Reaction Force commander seals an encrypted rugged drive in an evidence bag. Time and handling are logged cleanly, and the bag moves to a counterintelligence element for chain of custody. The drive likely holds payments, coordinates, and contractor routing tied to the attack. No names are guessed, only the promise that the data will speak. Radios confirm the contractor net is silent, and remaining threats are breaking contact. The focus shifts from gunfire to preservation of truth and lives. An investigation will follow with interviews and document pulls. Not courtroom drama in a field. The priority today is accuracy under pressure. Captain Daniel Brooks consolidates vehicles at a safer rally point away from the old mine belt. He rechecks accountability and pushes a concise update to higher headquarters. Medics, continue march reassessments with calm hands. Hypothermia prevention stays in place, and handoff notes build for the receiving surgical team. A crew chief tucks a blanket tighter around a litter patient as engines hum. A young medic writes clean times and vitals on a board and checks a pulse again. Avery watches the rhythm return and lets her shoulders drop a fraction. The cabin smells like fuel, gauze, and dust that is finally settling. Order moves back into the gaps where chaos lived an hour ago. Procedures carry weight because someone kept them simple and followed them. The facts will be followed, and people will answer for choices. They can do it because one person who was left behind chose to stand in place and keep working. Chaos blurs judgment, which is why protocol exists. At Sector Bravo 4, Tactical combat casualty care and triage under March were the spine that kept people moving. March is not a slogan. It is a sequence that saves the most lives when hands and minutes are short. Overload still creates misses. Walking wounded calls happen when dust, rotor wash, and simultaneous bleeds force hard choices. The medics at the lane followed process under pressure. The failure was missed reassessment in a fast evacuation, not bias or intent. Reassessment intervals matter. Hypothermia prevention matters because cold blood does not clot and shock deepens fast. Avery Collins is the quiet counterpoint. Her training and restraint did not replace protocol. They reinforced it when the net went loud. She used challenge and reply on radios instead of reading codes on an open circuit. That single habit kept trust tight while she guided steel by landmarks. She kept March on herself with packing, pressure, junctional control, and warmth. She chose intraosseous access when veins would not hold, then returned to the work. Simple habits prevent misses at scale. One more question at the edge of a landing zone can change a tag and a life. One more look before a helicopter lifts can catch a slow bleed. One more cross-check on a map can keep a convoy out of a mine belt. This is not about blame. It is about building a culture where protocol and human judgment shake hands in the smoke. Leaders set the tone by asking for reassessment and making room for calm voices. Specialists make it real by keeping checklists simple and repeatable under stress. The promise is quiet and firm. Protocol is the backbone. Judgment is the heartbeat. And when both show up at the same time, people live. Avery Collins is the quiet professional. She is Petty Officer First Class, an E-6 Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technician who supports naval special warfare and is not a Navy SEAL. In real terms, she clears explosive hazards and marks safe lanes, so heavy vehicles live. She runs radios when needed, translates risk into plain words, and keeps compassion inside procedure. Her choices show leave no one behind without speeches. She put the worst cases on the helicopter first and took the last seat only when every litter was secure. She held security while in pain and kept breath slow so hands stayed steady. She guided steel across a mine risk because she remembered the ground and trusted her recon. That balance is the work. Pack a junctional bleed. Prevent hypothermia. Use intraosseous access when shock trashes veins. Then go right back to protecting others. Character sits in small beats, not headlines. A nod to a captain who owned a mistake. A tighter wrap on a private sling. A quiet status call that kept drivers calm. Avery stands in for enlisted specialists across the force who do hard, technical jobs with little spotlight. They keep people breathing by marrying checklists to judgment and letting the results speak. Competence, humility, and duty are the center of her arc. She shows how a single calm person can steady a net, shape a fight, and carry a column out by landmarks. Thank you for staying through a hard story. If you have a minute, share one small habit you would add at a landing zone, on a radio, or inside a moving convoy to keep people safe. Think about simple moves that matter. A clean challenge and reply before engines spool. A quick reassessment under March before a helicopter lifts. One more cross-check on landmarks before steel rolls. If this helped you, pass it to someone who works in medicine, aviation, or military logistics. Lessons travel farther when crews, medics, and enlisted specialists compare notes and keep them practical. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you want the next episode that breaks down EOD landmark guiding and March reassessment with plain visuals. We will keep it clear, useful, and respectful of the people who do this work. There is a next video waiting on your screen. Treat it like the continuation of this mission, not a cliffhanger. Come back with your best habit, your calm voice, and your focus on what keeps people breathing. Thank you for watching and caring about accuracy. This story is fictional, but procedures align with tactical combat casualty care and explosive ordnance disposal best practices where possible. Avery Collins is a Navy explosive ordnance disposal technician supporting naval special warfare. She is not a Navy SEAL. The trident ink shown is a personal tattoo, not an official badge. Dog tags were referenced in the plural. Platform names were used with care. Stryker, HMMWV, Humvee, MRAP, UH-60 Blackhawk, and HH-60 Mike Midevac appear as depicted. Radio authentication was shown with challenge and reply on open nets. No public clearance codes were transmitted. No real units, call signs, or locations were used. Any similarity to actual persons or events is coincidental. Military, medical, and EOD advisors provided general review. Any remaining errors are the responsibility of the creators. Nothing in this video is training. If you serve or work in medicine, follow official guidance and local protocols. We appreciate your time and attention. Stay safe, stay curious, and thank you for being here. Quick field tip before we really move. Hypothermia prevention is the H in March, and it matters even when the air feels mild. Insulation, hydration, and smart layers keep hands working and minds clear during long holds. Keep a foil blanket ready and trap heat early before shivering starts. Cover the core first. Dry, damp cuffs. And sip water on schedule. Small choices like insulation, hydration, and smart layering protect focus when wind shifts and a long hold turns cold. If you want warmth or recovery tools, check our sponsor below. Nothing replaces training, judgment, or your protocol. Back to the lane as the convoy is staged at the marker. Engines at idle. And we move to the next scene. Show half of Avery Collins's face, dusty and sweating, with a UH-60 Blackhawk blurred in the background. Use large headline text that reads, "Left Behind," with a smaller line that reads, "EOD Tech." Avoid the word SEAL. Add a small mine warning icon near the lower corner and a thin border styled like 550 chord. Keep background simple and defocused so the face and words stay readable on a phone screen. On screen, lower thirds, for key beats should be short and accurate. Use March, control bleeding, airway respiration, circulation, hypothermia. Singar's challenge and reply. Junctional tourniquet. HH-60, Mike Midevac. Place each label only once on first mention and keep them off busy frames. Use high contrast colors with clean sans serif type and strong edge separation. Match every on-screen term to the narration and to correct roles and vehicles. Verify Stryker. HMMWV, Humvee. And MRAP appear with accurate names. Confirm radio etiquette references, challenge and reply. Not public codes. Keep everything clear, respectful, and technically correct. Begin with low rotor rumble, soft radio static, and a gentle heartbeat under the cold open. Keep the bed subtle so breaths and grit read clearly. Let distant artillery sit wide so space feels real. During self-aid, pull music down and lift Foley. Use fabric tear, Velcro rip, foil blanket crinkle, and short measured breaths. Keep reverb dry so details cut through. In contact beats, use tight carbine reports with short decay, dirt scatter, and shell cases, clicking, duck backgrounds on each shot so the listener feels timing and control rather than noise. When Avery guides the convoy, add a very soft metronome to suggest timing. Engines idling low, and a whisper of wind. Hold brief silences before key lines so the words land clean. For the standoff, strip to breath, gravel shift, and one hard impact. Bring relief tones as quick reaction force arrives. Rotors compressing air. Crew chief hand signals visible. And muffled cabin ambience inside the medical helicopter. Edit pacing starts with 2 to 3 second cuts from part 1 through part 5. Lengthen to 5 to 7 seconds during convoy guidance. With quick punch-ins on hands, radios, and mirrors. Then wider shots that breathe at the rally point. Grade cool in the valley and warmer inside the medical cabin to signal safety. Add clean lower thirds the first time terms appear. Then retire them. Mix for phone speakers first and avoid peaking. Keep dialogue forward. Effects tucked. And music supportive. Let silence carry weight so the story is heard without shouting. Start cold and close. Dust hangs in the throat as radio static fades. And Avery Collins kneels in cover with breath measured and hands steady. Stakes are survival, not spectacle. Describe wounds without gore. Use packed hemostatic gauze in place. Firm pressure held. Pelvic binder secure. And intraosseous access locked. Let the reader feel control through clean terms and timing. Render radio authentication as narration. She requests challenge and reply. Receives a 6-digit time hack tied to landmarks. Returns the correct counter. And earns the net. Keep it brisk and matter of fact. Keep convoy guidance in plain speech that drivers can follow. Use brake. Hold. A creep. Pivot. And stop as core verbs. Tie each command to a fixed landmark rather than inches to a mine. Write the lane like a memory map. Lead Humvee brake at the lightning-scarred stump. Creep to the white-veined rock. Pivot to set rear axle on firm ground. Stop at the dry creek bed cairn. And hold for spacing. Note, safe movement rules. 1 right side spotter, only. Radios at whisper. Gunners scan high and never sweep barrels near soft ground. Engines idle low to cut vibration. Keep AR pattern carbine handling exact. Selector on semi. Short trigger press. Reset. Controlled pair when needed. Reload flow is mag out. Mag in. Bolt release. And press check only if time and cover allow. Favor leverage over spectacle in close quarters. Forearm frame blocks the throat press. Hip rotation breaks balance. And a small step on loose gravel turns weight. Finish clean. Breathe. And check the perimeter before moving. Name aircraft and roles correctly. HH-60 mic for medical lift. UH-60 for utility. Approach under crew chief control. And keep barrels high around soft soil. Use visual panels for landing zones when fire risk is present. Close with a calm call to action. Invite viewers to share one checklist item they would add at a landing zone or on a radio. Point them to the follow-up video on EOD landmarks and March reassessment for clear. Simple visuals. This story lands because it treats inspiration like work, not spectacle. It stands on 3 quiet pillars that people feel without being told. Fairness, silent competence, and forgiveness that looks like duty. Fairness comes first. The person pushed aside chose to protect the group, and that satisfies a simple hunger for justice without shaming anyone. The lane stayed open because someone refused to close her hands. Silent competence earns trust. Avery Collins is a Navy explosive ordnance disposal technician, not a Navy SEAL, and her skill reads in plain moves. She uses tactical combat casualty care, clean radio work, and landmark memory to save lives. Forgiveness shows up as duty. She does not chase apologies or speeches. She moves steel, hands off a drive with chain of custody, and lets the record speak. You can map each pillar to a beat. The March self-aid avoided reckless moves and kept her in the fight. The landmark-to-landmark convoy guidance favored process over heroics and kept HMMWV Humvees and an MRAP off soft ground. Load last was the final proof. She confirmed the worst cases were on the HH-60 mic before taking a seat. That is service before self in a quiet line of action. Notice how restraint creates power. One breath before a transmission on Singars. One extra glance at a white-veined rock before a driver creeps forward. One final check on a litter strap can buy an hour. Small choices shape outcomes when dust and time stack against you. That is the spine that matters here. This channel promises stories that honor real work and use accurate terms. We will say Singars, MRAP, and HMMWV, and mean them. Credit belongs to enlisted specialists who keep people alive through skill, judgment, and quiet courage. The day at Sector Bravo 4 began with mortar strikes and dust in the teeth. Chaos pressed on every voice and every heartbeat. A walking wounded call was made in that fog. Avery Collins chose what to do next. She guided a convoy across an old mine belt with landmarks and calm radio work on Singars. She kept language plain and the engines at idle. Her real role matters. She is a Navy explosive ordnance disposal technician, not a Navy SEAL. Correct tactical combat casualty care kept her alive long enough to help others. She packed hemostatic gauze, held pressure, guarded warmth, and used intraosseous access when veins failed. She stayed on the net and moved steel by memory. That is craft, not luck. Proof was handled the right way. An encrypted drive moved into an evidence bag with chain of custody. The quick reaction force arrived with a UH-60 Black Hawk and an HH-60 Mike Medevac. And she loaded last. The lesson is simple and steady. Protocol plus judgment, not blame. When both show up together, people live. Carry one habit forward. Take a second look at a map before you turn. Use a clean challenge and reply on the net. Or run one more reassessment before a helicopter lifts. This work is done by many quiet hands. Medics who tape down corners and watch for hypothermia. Crew chiefs who mark clean landing zones and keep rotors safe. Drivers hold spacing when nerves want speed. Enlisted specialists remember the ground and speak in landmarks. They make small, correct choices that keep people breathing. Thank you for giving them your attention tonight. Let relief sit in your chest and let respect guide your next move. We will be here for the next hard lesson told with care. Primary title is Left Behind at Bravo 4. An EOD tech walks a convoy out. Backup titles are Quiet Professional in a Mine Belt and EOD Tech Guides, Steel by Landmarks. At Sector Bravo 4. Mortar strikes and confusion led to a walking wounded call that left Avery Collins on a ridge. She is Petty Officer First Class. An E6 Navy explosive ordnance disposal technician who used tactical combat casualty care and calm Singars guidance to walk 6 Humvees and 2 troop carriers out by landmarks. The story focuses on correct care, safe lanes, and quiet judgment under pressure. Platforms shown include Stryker, HMMWV Humvee, MRAP, UH-60 Black Hawk, and HH-60 Mike Medevac. Share thoughtful comments about protocol and judgment. And subscribe for the next breakdown on March and Singars, challenge and reply. Tags include Avery Collins, Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal, EOD Tech, Tactical Combat Casualty Care, March, Sinkers, Mine Belt, Convoy Safety, Stryker, HMMWV Humvee, MRAP, UA-60 Black Hawk, HH-60. Mic, Medevac. Quick reaction force. Chain of custody. Walking wounded. Landmark navigation. Junctional tourniquet. Intraosseous access. Hypothermia prevention. Quiet, professional. Enlisted specialists. Military storytelling. Accuracy. First. Radio discipline. Convoy procedures. Field craft. Calm leadership. Set clear chapter markers using natural spoken time. 0 minutes. 10 seconds. Left behind. 1 minute. 10 seconds. Bravo. 4 chaos. 2 minutes EOD reveal. 3 minutes TCCC self-aid. 4 minutes. 20 seconds first contact. 5 minutes. 10 seconds mine belt. 6 minutes enemy deception. 6 minutes. 45 seconds authenticate. 8 minutes. 15 seconds ridge fight. 9 minutes. 10 seconds standoff. 10 minutes walking them out. 11 minutes. 20 seconds die on my feet. 12 minutes QRF. 12 minutes. 40 seconds aftermath. 13 minutes. 10 seconds reflection. 13 minutes. 50 seconds CTA. Add on screen micro hooks 2 seconds before big shifts. Use mine belt ahead. Authenticate now. Last magazine. And load last. Leave a quiet half beat before each hook so the words land. Place one info card at about 2 minutes, previewing the EOD landmarks breakdown. Use a simple title and a clean arrow so phone viewers can see it. Set one end screen at 14 minutes that cues the next episode. Keep captions and chapter labels identical to narration. Use short nouns and verbs so the eye locks fast. Avoid clutter behind text and keep contrast high. Review pacing against these anchors in the final pass. If average view dips near a marker, front-load the next hook by 5 seconds. Keep the plan human and steady so viewers stay with the story. Use open captions with speaker ID, sound cues, and natural spoken time. Add audio description for hand signals, terrain markers, and crew chief gestures. Choose large, high contrast fonts with color-safe palettes for common color blindness. Provide multilingual subtitles in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese with plain wording and neutral idioms. Include a brief on-screen glossary the first time terms appear, such as SINGARS, junctional tourniquet, and HH-60 mic medevac. Show both metric and imperial units on maps and overlays. Keep chapter links keyboard-friendly and readable by screen readers. Set clear focus order for buttons and cards. Mix voice levels for phone speakers. Keep music low under narration. And avoid rapid edits that clip words. Test captions, keyboard navigation, and descriptions on a small screen before export. Confirm identity language. Avery Collins, his petty officer, first class. An E-6 Navy explosive ordnance disposal technician. Never a Navy SEAL. Verify correct platform names across all scenes. Use Stryker. HMM WV Humvee. MRAP. UH-60 Black Hawk for utility. And HH-60 Mike Medevac for medical. Check tactical combat casualty care sequencing under march. Massive hemorrhage. Airway. Respiration. Circulation. Hypothermia. With junctional bleed control using hemostatic gauze and a SAM junctional tourniquet or pelvic binder. Prefer intraosseous access over intravenous for shock. Validate radio etiquette. All convoy control on SINGARS with challenge and reply. No clearance codes read on open nets. Ensure EOD guidance uses landmarks and safe lanes, not inch-based proximity to mines. Audit firearms handling notes for an AR pattern carbine on semi. Short trigger press. Reset. Controlled pair. And proper reload flow of mag out. Mag in. Bolt release. Press check only with time and cover. Require dog tags to be plural. Run a language pass for humility. No gore. And no blame. Confirm captions. Glossary terms. And on-screen labels match narration and remain accurate. Mix levels for phone listening and keep labels legible at phone size.